be infiltrated by the Zionist movement and the globalists still. But there's a means to an end. Why should I talk about reform? What have I got to say about reform? Well, I've talked to reform members of parliament, general election candidates, Froome, Hustings in Froome, David Swain, who was running for reform, and I questioned him on cancellation, something we go on about all the time. And I've also interviewed and talked to several other prominent councillors or members of parliament candidates as well. And I'm very interested in the whole political spectrum. And I've been talking about elections and getting more involved in talking about elections and by-elections since pre-referendum. With some of me, it's coming in at the Batley by-election 2021, spent a week up there, interviewed George Galloway. When I was a rookie and nobody knew me, I turned up at a mosque in Cheetham Hill, Manchester, and questioned the Labour, veteran Labour MP, Graham Stringer. And what I did, I questioned him on the Labour Party not dealing with issues between communities, which is well known, well documented, not just in Oldham, but around the country. And my question got an eruption of applause from everyone in the room, and they were either Muslim or Jewish. So I did definitely hit a nerve there, and I have looked into some of these issues that I do talk about. But lately, we've got some defections going to reform. We've got Jenrick, who told everyone to stay inside and went breaking the rules during COVID. Proper followed it by the book. Also, Jenrick is linked to prominent Israeli businessmen as well. So we can just see the route we're going down with Jenrick there. He's definitely a global control puppet. We've got Nadine Zawar. Now, I wasn't going to go on about Nadeem because he weren't born here. He's got no, history to do with Britain. And really, in an ideal world, he won't be a member of parliament, simple as. But, I'm going to throw him in, Bangladeshi, born abroad. Now, he hasn't done anything particular. Nadeem Zawar.
Is Iraqi?
Yeah, Iraqi, Bangla, whatever, a mixture of a couple of things. But he was born in Baghdad, I think, yeah. And anyway, so it shouldn't even be relevant. But if we look at him, we can see corruption. We can see he worked for a big oil company as a strategist for them. So he's obviously going to be influenced by these global companies and stuff like that. But, I want to get down to my favourite of the bunch, Suella. I want to get down to Suella, my favourite, definitely my way favourite of the bunch. But, she said some questionable things that she would have got cancelled for. She said them a few years ago. She seems to be jumping on board to the sinking ship of the Tories, trying to get a place back with reform if they get a government. But what do we think about this, guys? It's important, and we need to know about these people and what they've already previously done in previous governments and how they failed our country. And now they're jumping ship into reform, thinking they can keep the political positions. But anyway, that's me. Thank you, everyone in the chat. We've got two amazing guests on tonight. Ken Thompson. Good evening, Ken.
Good evening, guys. Thanks very much for having me on.
No worries. And we've got Alistair on as a force for good. How are you, Alistair?
Very well, John. Thanks for inviting me onto your esteemed show. I always love appearing on the National Housing Party UK weekly programme.
Thank you, Alistair. So, and of course, we've got the mighty Pat McGuinness. It did come on at 30 seconds to the time, but he's here anyway. So, and probably Pat's always pushes it on the time because he'll have been out or doing something to do with his election. I bet you. But anyway, So, guys, what do you think of the people I've just been talking about and the defections to reform? Do you think that they're leaving a sinking ship, thinking they can get in if reform, get a government, just looking out for themselves? What do you think of the past? Like I said, Genric and COVID. Nadil, he's been involved in tax dodging. And then Suella, what do you think of that, Ken? We'll go to Ken first.
Well, obviously, I mean, what really a shambles they were involved with during their own Tory administration, own Tory government, opening the door, bringing in millions of people to the country from third world countries. They presided over all the COVID scenario, which was an absolute disgrace. How could we trust these people with the amount of lies they told the public, the propaganda that they pumped out to get everybody locked down and jabbed, resulting in a lot of injuries, a lot of problems with the lockdown, businesses closing, people's mental health, tipped off the scale. And these guys are all members of the cabinet. They all had collective responsibility for what they did. So, I think, reform for me, and Farage, really, anything that Farage is leading has been a problem for a long time. That's why I've never joined any of these parties. I was with UKIP originally. And when Farage left and called us all racists, I just thought, well, that's not ideal. We tried to destroy UKIP and probably did a fair job actually in destroying UKIP. So yeah, I've just never wanted to have anything to do with the guy, and I certainly wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw him. And bringing these people in, I think it just shows his true colours as to what they are. And they don't care about the country, about the mess that it's been in. They don't care about fixing it. All they crave is power, and that's how I see it.
Alistair, what do you think?
I think that it's understandable that they would do this. Now, if we cast our minds back to the period when we were all forced or trying to be forced to take the jibby jabby, as I say, as a euphemism without having to mention the C word, Zahawi was front and foremost promoting that, but got to remember as well, so did Nigel as well. And these guys, they were all for that as well, which was a mistake from our particular perspective, certainly. So Farage and his crew who run it don't look upon Braverman and Genric and Zahawi with the disdain that folk like us do, people who were totally opposed to that jibby-jabby program. So from their perspective, we can criticize Farage from our perspective, but from his perspective, I don't think he's thinking about that particular matter of it. What's disturbing from our perspective is a party reform that claims to want to stop mass immigration has taken on board people who, during their time in power, did promote it. Now, Genric, I suppose you could argue, has tried to redeem himself. Genric did resign from the Tories, from his position as a consequence of all of that. But as we've seen, he still welcomed all these Afghan people, refugees, so-called, into the country. I mean, he was front and foremost in that program of welcoming all of these people from Afghanistan. He can't pretend that he wasn't directly involved. When we hear about terrible crimes or worse being committed by these refugees, it was people like himself, and sometimes him directly, who did bring that in to the country. So I am very nervous about that. But him and Braverman appear to have tried to redeem themselves on that matter. But from Reform's perspective, I don't know if it's a particularly good move. I can understand them, again, wanting people who have experience in cabinet. But is that the sort of experience that we want? I mean, how much experience does Jenrick have that somebody else can't just learn on the job within 2 or 3 months? So that's maybe what they'll say. They'll say we want Jenrick and Braverman and so on because they've got experience. But I think it must be more to do with connections. There must be connections that Zahawi has, that Braverman has, that Jenrick has, that maybe foreign connections as well, that for some reason Farage thinks will be important to him and to the party, and maybe even, in his view, to the country as well. So I think that must be the reason he's getting them in, is there must be connections there, maybe connections to some diplomatic people in other governments, or maybe connections to money. Connections to money could be a reason that they're letting these people in. From our perspective, from your usual punter's perspective, though, it doesn't look very good. I mean, these are people from a failed cabinet, Boris Johnston's failed cabinet, who are now moving into the Reform Party. And so it does, from Reform's perspective, it does make them look like just a Tory party 2.0, which they must feel that they'll be able to weather that. They must feel that their vote among the old Labour constituencies won't be bothered by that. I still think it's a risky move, whatever way you look at it. I can understand it from their perspective, but I do think it's risky. It just makes them look like Tories again, and that's what I think we're all trying to escape. We're wanting something new, something fresh, something radical as well. Something radical, and we can get into this later, but I'm not quite sure how radical reform is, because to sort the problems in this country, they're going to need to be very radical. I mean, this is by the time they get into power, it's going to take serious effort to turn things around. They've got to be radical. Filling it with elderly, retired Tory councillors is not going to be what, God bless them all, though. But they're not. It's not going to cut it, really. They need young, fresh faces, radical people coming up. Do they have a program for that, to encourage such people to come up in their ranks? People who will be considered to be politically incorrect and don't care about that, and who don't hold to the old politically correct ways of doing things. Do they have these people? Are they encouraging them? I hope so. That's my thoughts summarized.
Thank you, Alistair. Interesting. A couple of points been mentioned: UKIP and cabinet experience. But we'll let Pat go first. Pat, what do you think of these defections? What do you think? Do you agree on the points we're saying about failed Tories, this, that, and the other?
Yeah, well, most people know my feelings on Nigel Farage and reform, and I've been against Nigel Farage since 2012 when I was in the BNP. People need to remember that reform have banned probably around 100,000 patriots who have not broken any laws. So they're happy for this Nadine Zawahi, whatever his name is, Suella Braverman, what's his name, Youssef. They're allowed to be in the government if they get elected as government, but they've excluded 100,000 patriots from being in that government. This is just wrong. that thing alone is just outrageous, and people have sort of forgotten about that. Everyone kept saying, they'll get more hardline as they go along. It's going the opposite way. They've let in all these Tories. They've let in all the people who have destroyed the country. I mean, Jenrick is on record as saying he wants, instead of saying we want a union flag at every desk at the airports and seaports, instead of saying we want the Union Jack, which is 3 Christian crosses, he wants a Star of David to show people that we love Jews. We welcome Jews. I mean, what have we done wrong? It's like when you say, "Oh, I'm not racist." It's like you've done something wrong. You're blaming someone else, and it's all like Alistair mentioned. It's all politically correct language, and we need to speak out against this and get it out of society. this sort of language. So you know, and then you know, they don't want to stop immigration. They don't want to stop accepting refugees. They don't want to leave the Refugee Convention. They want to temporarily suspend it. Yeah, well, hold on a minute. Our country's being destroyed. We've got an open door at Dover because of the Refugee Convention, and you're saying you want to suspend it and then bring it back. It's like, come on, guys. It's been a total disaster. Not only has it destroyed our country, it's destroyed many countries in the West, all of Europe. And it's time to say to the world, no more refugees. We've done more than enough to help refugees. And the time has come that we can't, we're trillions in debt. We're in a housing crisis. We're not even in a position to temporarily help. Yes, refugees should be temporarily helped, but we're not even in that position now because of what has happened. So there's so much going on at the moment. I mean, politics is just like, it's just exploding everywhere. I mean, you've got the Epstein files. Nigel Farage been photographed with Epstein. You know, why is Farage, right? Why is he like signing all these deals with Israel? It's like, you're not even in government yet, mate. And he's creating all these Jewish groups. He went to the secret meeting to celebrate the anniversary of the creation of Israel. What was you going to say, Alistair?
Sorry, I was just going to say about the Epstein thing. There is a silly photograph circulating that appears to show Farage and Epstein, but that's not a real photograph. That's an AI photograph. So
really?
He's never met Epstein. That's the problem with the internet, is especially these Epstein files as well. Is people are now just having games with it. Like, look who's been photographed with Epstein. And most people, including myself, of course, have a great difficulty in telling the difference. But I can tell you for a fact that's literally
right. Well, thank you for correcting me there.
It's also when you examine it, it's badly edited as well, because his arm seems to be going through Epstein's upper rib cage sort of thing. So but what everything else you said there is certainly a concern, and I think that he is playing this heavy Zionist angle because, you know, that's where the power is, and that's where the media power is as well. The mainstream media is not going to let you on to even GB News unless you take the appropriate points of view on that Middle East conflict, whether it's against Iran or whether it's against Palestine.
That's an interesting point. Has George Galloway ever been on GB News?
I don't know.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, probably not to discuss those issues, though, if he's ever been on it before. Perhaps to discuss the Scottish referendum issues and things like that, maybe.
Yeah. So just following on with what I was saying, so there's so much happening at the moment. So Reform become more and more moderate. They've taken in all the Tories who destroyed the country. You know, they're going to Davos. They're taking big donations from the WEF. They want to stay in NATO. They're supporting Israel 100%, even though they're committing war crimes. So they're so moderate. Another party sprung up, Advance UK, and lots of people left Reform to join Advance UK. And then the election was called in Dunton and what's it called?
Denton.
Gorton and Denton, yes, in Manchester. And Advance have standing a candidate, Nick Buckley. And so many people are going mental about it. Well, hold on a minute. I say Farage has only got himself to blame, because if his party wasn't so moderate, there wouldn't be a Advance UK. There wouldn't be all these rival parties. You know, that's basically, it's as simple as that. So I think Advance have got all the right. You know, what is the point in starting a party if you're not going to stand in elections? You know, they literally started Advance because they're not happy with Reform. So how can you just stand out the way for a party? You've started a party just because you said they're not happy with Reform. So it's going to be interesting, that one. I'm not sure what's going to happen there, but I think Nick Buckley's a brave man for doing what he's doing. and I sent him a little message, supportive message for what, because he's getting a lot of stick, and at the end of the day, you know, everyone says, oh, you know, this, that, and the other, but Farage, I think, you know, when they get into power, they're not going to stop immigration. They're not going to stop accepting refugees. They're going to continue supporting Israel with their illegal wars. I mean, they're supporting illegal wars. It's just unbelievable. So you got Rupert Lowe hovering. Now he said he's going to start a new party. And it's like, I do like Rupert Lowe, but even Rupert Lowe said, you know, same as Ben Habib, like, oh, Labour are not supporting Israel enough when they're like massacring 50,000 civilians in Gaza.
Are you sure Rupert Lowe said that? I mean,
I've seen the tweets. I see him tweet it. Really, yeah. And I was very disappointed. And maybe, hopefully, he will change. But we'll see what happens. So why isn't he joining Advance? Maybe because of Tommy Robinson. Because Tommy Robinson asked Rupert Lowe to speak at Unite the Kingdom Fest.
Did you say Unite the Cringe?
Was he a member of Reform at the time, or no?
Well,
Rupert Lowe.
No, he wasn't. So Tommy asked him to speak. Rupert Lowe declined. Maybe that's why Rupert Lowe doesn't want to go into Advance. So yeah, it's all looking interesting. But yeah, the cancel culture one's a big one. I mean, come on. You know, they've excluded 100,000 people from government, and they're happy to have all these foreigners in the government and not a load of patriots who tried to save the country in a legal and democratic way within the law. It's outrageous. So I'm not a fan of reform. You know, I think Labour and Conservative were finished anyway. Didn't really need reform to finish them off. So yeah, that's my stance on it. I think it's a disgrace really that they've let all those Tories in their party. And also, you know, for the Mayor of London, right? I personally would not be against having a Muslim or an ethnic minority stand, obviously, right? If you can't find someone in that area, if you can't find anyone, you'd be stupid not to have someone who's come forward, who supports your policies, and they're going to stand. But the Mayor of London, Reform UK, there was like hundreds of English people they could have chosen for that. This is the capital of the country, the mayor, and they chose two politically correct boxes, Muslim and a woman. And she used to be very, very woke, and she's miraculously changed. So
Layla Cunningham.
Yeah.
Right. Well. Let me just digest all that interesting stuff all round. I have got a little video coming up in a minute, but with Nigel Farage that I'll play. Then my big personal grievance will come after that to do with that man. But you know, I'm going to bring up UKIP because Bingy mentioned that, Ken mentioned earlier, and Pat mentioned, will be mentioned in it. I like the comment that Alistair made on cabinet experience. I like that. I like that a lot. I think I might briefly have said something to Pat about it, but yeah, I'm interested in that. But anyway, let's go on with that little video.
But you support the idea of taking refugees who are persecuted because of race, nationality, religion.
I've always believed in that, and I think this country has a long tradition of helping genuine refugees. Perhaps as a country, our ability, our willingness to take large numbers even of genuine refugees is not as good as it should probably.
But you have no problem with the majority of refugees coming to this country being Muslim.
If people, regardless of being Christian or Jewish or Muslim, if they fit with the 1951 definition, the Geneva definition of what a refugee is, then that's the criteria we should use.
And I think this country should honour the spirit of the 1951 Declaration on Refugee Status that was agreed. It was agreed with the UN and even through the European Court, which sadly has changed its role. But the original ideas of defining what a refugee is were good ones. And I think actually there is a responsibility on all of us in the Free West to try and help some of those
people who genuinely are fleeing conditions in which they would be persecuted. Perhaps rather like the Afghan translators who did so much for the British Army.
It would be a win for this country, it would be a win for France, and it also, more importantly, would be a big win for genuine asylum seekers stuck in these camps all around the world.
If people come because they're genuinely refugees, we've always opened our doors as a country more than anybody in the world.
So, Nigel Farage's greatest hits with the convention there. Now, Pat, did you say that Reform want to put a bit of a break on it? Is that official?
Well, they sort of change their policy every month, and I've given up. Keep looking at their website. So I think, why do I have to keep looking at their website? But the latest one I saw, I mean, it's ridiculous what he's saying, right? He's saying, I've seen him in a press conference recently say, look, we want to stop the boats, but we're going to continue taking refugees through the proper channels. So if any people come on the dinghies, say from Iraq or Syria or Eritrea, which legitimate claims for if you want to accept refugees, they are refugees. They could quite easily qualify that. So Farage is saying that it will take them through the proper channels, but not through the boat. So if they come on the boats, how is he going to send them back to that country if he's taking people through the proper channels from that country? He's not really thinking it through, and
sorry,
yeah,
they haven't thought that through completely, because as you just said there, if they say we're going to take 5,000 a year through the proper channels, okay, they'll take in 5,000. That won't take them very long. That'll be in the first few weeks of the year, and then they say, okay, nobody else comes in through the proper channels. So that just means that everybody is now going to come in through the improper channels across the English Channel.
And
what are you going to do with them?
And there's no housing. So where are they going to go, Nigel? Are they going to go in Nigel's mansion? I don't think so. At the end of the day, he won't come out and say no more refugees. And I'll tell you why. The reason he won't never do that is because they will say, the media will say, well, what about if all the Jews in Israel are going to be killed? Would you take them in? And he would say, oh, no, I'd have to, that's basically where it ends up, is back to World War II, and things like that. That's the reason he won't ever say it, because he's politically correct. He's part of the Zionist machine, and we need a party to say no more refugees, no more permanent settlement. We've got to stabilise our country. The party's over. Vote National Housing Party.
Right. So now I want to go back to Ken mentioned UKIP. So I mean, Farage has got. It's really easy to see what he does. When in the UKIP days, you never heard him say anything about Pakistani rape gangs. Never said anything about it. When UKIP became a bit too much going that way, left and called them all the R word. Yeah, that's what he did. He branded them all. And like Pat says, he branded all them patriots because they had a different view or they followed somebody else. Now, he jumps on board when he knows the time is right with these issues, because now he has come on board with the Muslim Pakistani gangs. How do I know? I've got another little clip for you. It shiver me timbers, this clip, but I'll let you know when we get into it.
Okay.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah,
as well?
please do.
I find it quite overwhelming as well that every single one of these medias has said something about a comment that was made by Sarah, which is understandable, absolutely fine. Yet it's taken medias decades to recognise grooming gangs that are coming over and raping our children because they're white. That is also racially motivated, and it is racist.
100%. 100%. Gosh. That's very strong.
Now, he would never have sat down with anyone. He would never have let anyone say something like that when in the UKIP days. He wouldn't. He never did. He never sat down, and it's personal to me because the woman there is Ellie Reynolds. I know Ellie Reynolds personally. Big John supported her case well before Nigel Farage had formed Reform. You know, and her case is quite old. And, you know, it just winds me up that he's now sat next to her in a press conference and she says something like that. You would have never seen anyone sat next to Nigel Farage saying that in the UKIP days. He just wouldn't have been part of it. So, and you know, these things Pat's mentioned a couple of times. He sort of like gets on board with what's in the now because there has been calls for a public inquiry, because everybody else is talking about it. Nigel Farage has gone on board, and you know, like
let me just add one more thing when you finish, John.
It sounds a bit dodgy there.
Is it? Is that better?
Yeah.
Shall I speak now?
Yeah.
Just want to add one more thing. So it really just drives me absolutely insane when I see people like Farage and all the Reform leadership, and they got, like, when something bad happens, like when there was the attack at the synagogue. I think the guy was Syrian, yeah, who done it, and you know, Farage is saying, and there's videos of Farage saying we should let more Syrians in. He's the one who's been inviting them in, and now he's like screaming about it. He's been inviting refugees into this country for the last 20 years. He's been part of the machine to keep the door open. And then all of a sudden, people think that he's going to like say no more refugees. He's not going to do that.
I mean, sorry, John.
Go on.
No, it was just to say that I think that to give him some credit. I mean, people's politics do change in time. I knew Nigel Farage when he and I were on the UKIP executive back in the late 1990s, where the situation was completely different back then. I mean, people like myself were aware that immigration was becoming a major issue, but the great bulk of the British public were not. And so politicians back then didn't really address these issues because they weren't in their face. As time goes on, politicians, you know, they do develop their ideas, and I think that Farage has developed to become stronger on many of these things that previously he was not even thinking about. So I think you're right, though, Pat, that he's not the radical. He may not be able to deliver the radical change that we need. He may not even be all that bothered about doing so. But if he got into power, and if Reform got into power, then that would change the way everybody else thinks around them. That would change the political dynamic in society. And other people would then step forward who were hopefully able to do it. So, you know, I see him as a step on the way, a step in the right direction to ultimately what we need, even though he as a man is not perfect. But then who is? None of us are perfect. So, you know, I'm not a member of Reform. I don't know Farage these days. I haven't met him for 25 years, but you know, I can see his progress.
Yeah, it's just incredibly frustrating because I was in the BNP. He was demonising the BNP. I was campaigning to get out the 1951 Refugee Convention since 2016, and I could see the UKIP manifesto that they wanted to stay in it. They literally put it in black and white. We must continue to observe the 1951, and I'm just thinking, like, this is how we're being invaded. And so it's just very frustrating. Like, maybe not so much frustrating if he didn't call us all the politically correct names and banned us all from his party. Maybe, do you know what I mean? And it just, when he was at Dover and he's looking at all the dinghies coming in, he's going, "Oh, this is so terrible. What's going on?" Well, hold on a minute, Nigel. The BNP, if they was in power, this wouldn't have happened. And I just think he's part of the establishment. He's never been against permanent settlement immigration. He continually says he thinks immigration makes this country better. And I mean, look around, guys. Has immigration made this country better? I don't think so. So, you know, maybe if they get in, maybe it might be one or two positive things. But I personally could not vote for them because I'm banned from joining them. Maybe if I wasn't banned, I might like tactically vote. But I just thought, well, how can I vote for something where they've forbidden my views and banned me from government? Basically, it's pretty bad what they've done. And
right, hold on. So let's get Ken in. Ken.
Hi there. Yeah, I mean, it's just Farage. I wouldn't be as charitable, I don't think, as or as complimentary as Alistair there, that he's changed his actual views. I think he just blows with the wind, and he goes with what he thinks is politically acceptable at the time. I mean, you can slag off Thatcher for many things and all you want, but she was a conviction politician. She laid down her ideas at the start, said this is this is what I believe in, and this is what I'm going to fight for, and she didn't really budge particularly from that. I know that you may have some issues with Thatcher, but I kind of admired her for that. Whereas Farage has just been all over the place. With UKIP, I thought, I supported him in the early days when he was in the EU Parliament, trying to get a Brexit vote, leave the EU. And I must admit, I was maybe fooled into thinking that the Brexit vote, if we got Brexit, would solve a lot of the problems that we have, because that's how it was kind of portrayed in the media and by Farage himself. But you're obviously a bit of a visionary, Pat, onto the 1951 Refugee Convention, and that is really where our issues, I think, stem from. You guys are more expert on that side of things than I am. But no, I just think Farage is blown with the wind. He's not been consistent. He's led a lot of people up the garden path. He's destroyed any kind of talent that's come into his party and made sure that they don't succeed or get anywhere. And he's been a really divisive figure, and I think he's held Britain in a leftist place.
Let me just interrupt you there, Ken. There's just one other thing that recently he's just done. Yeah, he when all those Muslims were getting elected and they was like voting for the Muslim bloc vote or what, and he was going, "Oh, this is all terrible sectarian voting." And then he nominated Layla Cunningham as the mayor for London candidate. And what they said to him in the interview, why have you had her as the candidate? Oh, well, we're going to get the Muslim bloc vote. He's just a total hypocrite. He's just non-stop blowing in the wind. Over to you, Ken.
Pure opportunism, really. Pure opportunism. I think there's no conviction there whatsoever. It's just purely opportunism. And he's looking to maximise obviously his vote and his parties, but it's a big turnoff when we've watched that from politicians for many decades, trying to just win the votes by being populist rather than being conviction politician, which I think it was what Thatcher was, and she did I think turn the country around economically and did a lot of good, did a lot of harm obviously to our industry manufacturing, where maybe she should have taken a more protectionist route. But yes, it's Farage. I just can't take him seriously as a political anorak, which I am and have been for a long time. I just don't think he's got any principles whatsoever. None.
Well, thank you, Ken. Thank you, guys. Like I said, it still stands what I think. He's waited for the right time to get in, and he would never have mentioned Pakistani grooming gangs when he were in UKIP. He wouldn't want. When it started to go that way, he left and called them all names. Like Pat said, he banned them all from joining any party that's easy, and that's what he did. And it just infuriates me that I know Ellie personally, and I know her dad, and I've supported her from the beginning. And next thing,
if you spoke about Muslim grooming gangs in UKIP back in the day when Farage was leader, you'd get expelled.
Yeah, honestly, that's what they were like. They didn't want it. That's what I'm trying to say. But I'm going to go with Alistair a bit. I agree with Alistair. Reform are a means to an end, and I've said that from the very beginning. We've criticised them for whatever. The thing is, people are voting differently now. And I'm not bothered if there's an advance or Rupert Lowe does his own party, as long as people start changing to vote. And what we're noticing now is long-time voters are changing how they vote. That's why Labour have lost all these votes. You know what I mean? That's why they've lost so many votes in the country. People are changing. So it's 100%. It is a means to an end, 100 million trillion %. And even though the reform is not keen for a lot of us and all that, I do like a lot of the individuals who hold council positions, who speak out on certain things. I like them people, and they just do things on their own, and they're not good. They're not under anyone's whip. Like I said, I've questioned Member of Parliament candidates on cancellation, and David Swain, he did give me a good reply that I thanked him for and for being honest. But that's why I questioned him on, because we've talked about it. They've cancelled hundreds of thousands of people, tens of thousands of people. Oh, no, you believe that, or you followed that person, you can't be part of our group. And you know, that is like, it's just unacceptable. And on that like level, me and Pat are like way up the roof in agreeing on that like thing that they do. And you know, there was no need. We didn't have to wait to now for the Muslim grooming gangs. It's always been in the news. Lots of people have been saying about it, but only now certain politicians coming forward, because they know if they don't speak about it, they're going to lose. They're going to lose out and stuff like that. And you know, the final hypocrisy of like our government and stuff like that. And you know, like, if you're a Muslim, why are you voting for Shabana Mahmood? Why are you voting for that woman? Before she was a government minister, she was very anti-Israel, said some questionable things. Now she's a government minister, she shut her mouth, and she doesn't. You know, that just shows you how infiltrated our politics is in the UK. It really does. And, you know, we go on about Israel, but it's the same with the Gulf states. It's the same with China interfering with our European politics. There was dozens of European members of parliament under investigation for taking money off China. And you know, don't think it hasn't happened over here to our members of parliament. And that's what I am so against more than anything. I don't want Elon Musk donating. I don't want nobody interfering or influencing our politics. And unfortunately, Reform are influenced. They really are. So, so any thoughts?
Let's talk about our elections.
Go on then. Right, go on. Wait, let me start. Let me start. I forgot to say this. Last week, me and some other members of the public, we attended the Reform launch in Failsworth to speak about issues within the community. It wasn't a political stunt or anything like that. And by the end of it, the newly picked candidate for Hollingwood, who's already been a candidate for 2 weeks, come up to me and said about splitting the vote. And I just told him F off, because I've run there 4 years on the run. I did. I told him bluntly, guys, why should anybody talk to me like that when I've run in the same area? This will be my 5th election. And that's what he said to me. So, you know, there's going to be a bit of animosity in Oldham if they keep up that kind of pressure. And I'm going to be meeting these people on the street. But that's what he said to me. And I've run 5 elections, and this guy never run nothing in Hollingwood. He has been a councillor, but he's never run in Hollingwood. He's just been picked because he's Reform. And the attitude was, oh, it's Reform. People are going to vote for me. No, they're not, my man. No, they're not going to vote for the individual. That's what most people should do. But there you go. Go on, Pat.
So anyone who's watching, you know, we've said a lot of criticism of Reform and Farage, and we're not the type of people who just go on the internet and moan about things. We actually do stuff in our party. So does Ken, so does Alistair. And you know, I was out leafleting today in the rain. It's been raining all day in London today, 5 degrees. It's quite cold as well. And got a 2-hour session done today. I went canvassing last night for 2 hours, and I go canvassing twice a week, and I've been doing it for 3 years now for this campaign. The problem I've got is as I'm going round and round, you know, some of these estates I've been through them 5 times, but I keep finding new people I haven't spoke to. You know, I'm worried I'm going to be driving them mad, but it's impossible to catch them all in. You know, there's thousands of people, like, you know. So every time I go round on another sweep, I find new people. And the problem I've got though is I knock on the doors where I've got yeses, and just to remind them, and they can't remember who I am. But it's okay. It's okay. But we've got the yeses. We know who they are. So on the day of the election, you know. But you know, I'm chasing them all up, and I've got an excuse to knock on the door again now, anyway, because I've started a petition, and it was in my last newsletter about the drug problem in Covent Garden and what I think the solution is, because there's people taking crack and heroin outside people's front doors. There's needles outside the schools, and it's out of control. The police have just completely let go. They just let them do it. And I'm saying, you know, because in Camden, a lot of people don't realise they do have alcohol-free zones. So there's certain places in the borough of Camden you cannot drink a can of beer on the street. Right, not a lot of people know this, so they managed to enforce that. So why can't they enforce what I'm saying? Give people an automatic 4-week prison sentence if they're caught taking crack or heroin openly on the streets. I mean, that is an illegal substance. So you know, they're probably never going to do that, but it's going to put pressure on them to maybe they're going to do something else about it. But that is what the solution is. That it's been going on for 30 years. So that's my excuse to knock on the people I've spoke to twice before. I'm still getting new people saying they're going to vote for me. I'm not going to give out all my figures now, but it's all going well. And but I must say this. I mean, like I say, when we get to May, it's going to be a 3-year campaign. I've been doing it, and I've been knocking on the door twice a week. The only time I stopped doing it is when I nearly cut my fingers off and I had to have 2 months off. But as I get closer to the election, it's becoming more difficult. It's been difficult to go out anyway, right? But the closer I'm getting, it's like the pressure's mounting, and I'm like, oh. But you know, I'm just keeping to the routine, and we're going to have a big team on the day. And I think, you know, even if I lose, at least I can say I've tried, and you know, I've tried my best. And we'll see what happens. You know, I mean, I've tried to get a message to reform, tried to you know, tactically work with each other, because if they get elected in the council, I'm obviously going to be voting with them on a lot of issues. But we'll see what happens. I mean, it's all in God's hands, and you know, I'm praying that I'm going to get a good result. And even if I can just get to May and it all goes smoothly, it's going to be a victory for me, because I never thought that I would actually see this through. When I started 3 years ago, I thought, bloody hell, I'm not going to keep this up. But the thing about it, I used to go all around the country knocking on doors for all different people. And I got to the stage where I'm like, why don't I just do this for myself in my own area? Let's go for it. Because as a lot of people know, I stood in 2022 just for a practice run. And the response I got was so positive and just unbelievable I knew I had a chance to win. I didn't think I had that chance because we're in a Labour stronghold. It's Keir Starmer, and Labour have just said they're going to put the leader of the council in my ward because they think it's a safe seat, and it's going to be an incredible election. So
just remind me, what year is it? It's not this May, is it?
Yeah.
It's this May 2026. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Right.
Every 4 years. And if I win, they're stuck with me for 4 years. But I've got a sneaky feeling they might say, "Oh, we're going to change it to every year."
Well, that's what it is.
Not going to be.
That's what it is in mine. It's 3 elections in 4 years. It's exhausting. But you know, Pat just said then about his previous experience. So where have I got previous experience before we even started the party? I did. Rowley and Regis for Paul Rudge when he was doing for Britain First, and he did come 3rd, really shocked the ward. I also did Barnsley for another mate of mine and spent a week up there while he ran as an independent. So before I even started the party, I'm already comfortable knocking on doors, talking to people in the street. It's some of the skills that like me and Pat have developed coming up to when we started the party. You know what I mean? And I am. I'm extremely comfortable in nearly every situation. So you know, we've got some experience on that side. Now you know what would make me a good counsellor. Well, I work well together as a team. I work good. I've got my good own initiative and stuff like that. I think outside the box. I'm honest as well. I'm honest, and you know, I want to help people. I'm not in it to help myself. I want to help my community to therefore better help our country and everybody within our community. You know, 90%, 95, 98% of the people in my ward can't be bothered about war. They're not interested in Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Palestine. They're not interested in any of these things. And what it is, we're always forgotten. We're always forgotten because these things are top priority on news and no one says about anything else. You know what I mean? It's just ridiculous. And we do need change in our country. And I do think that everyone getting involved, whether you're a Reform Workers' Party candidate or anything like that, is good for the overall thing to get people voting differently. And that's what we need to do. We've always mourned, guys. We've always mourned that Labour Tories, that's all. We've mourned for like 20 to 30 years, but now there's like 5 parties that can be part of a government. So, and I think that's a positive thing for the rest of the country. That's what I do.
I want to hear about the Scottish elections.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Ken. Tell us about the ADF and what its plans are.
Yeah, we've just, well, I suppose for the last two or 3 years, we've been just travelling around a lot of focusing on really groups rather than individual constituencies, trying to raise a team as well with people who will stand in constituencies, which we've done. I think we've probably got about 6 at the moment for the ADF, a couple for Freedom Alliance. There was, I think, 6 that Sovereignty were standing. Sovereignty have now exited the Belmont, which is probably not a bad thing for the unionist element of our group and the parties there. I think that could probably be our advantage. I've always said to Sovereignty that we should be standing against each other because they could be hoovering up SNP votes while we hoover up Tories, Labours, Liberals, whoever, you know, the Lib Lab con. So that was the kind of plan. They've been around a lot of events and demonstrations and all the rest of it, and making contacts and building support. We're about to go to towns and put on some meet and greet with a tent and our leaflets and a bit of music actually as well, a bit of music and a few speeches. So that's how we're going to tackle some busy areas of the towns, and also got leafleting to do as well. We've got leaflets to get organised within the next week or so, and then we'll be out delivering full scale, you know, every other day probably, or every day even. So yeah, it's obviously our first outing in Scotland. We are really building towards the councils in 2027. So what we're doing here is to try and identify people who are willing to support us, work with us, fight for us, and obviously stand and obviously build working relationships with other parties who have got good people in them. Love to work with Alistair, who's got the right idea about just everything. NHP are brilliant as well. And some of the other parties that we work with. There's a few others that we're talking to that we'd like to sort of bring them in, who basically have the majority of the same ideas as we have. And, you know, I think that's the way forward. I think a number of parties actually working together, even to get into government, would protect against this corruption which comes in and takes over these parties and delivers top-down diktats from probably not the party leader, but probably from above him. But if it's a group of parties, I think that's more powerful and stronger and more secure. And that's what I would advocate that we do, you know, pull together and fight as one, basically. So that's where we're at the moment with ADF Scotland.
Well, just if some of your viewers might not know that the Holyrood elections, they're on the same day as the Senedd elections, and it's the 7th of May, also the same day as the English Council English Council elections. In Scotland, we elect 129 MSPs. Now, 72 of these are elected on the first ballot paper, or by the basis of first past the post constituencies. So we have 72 first past the post constituencies, and the remaining 56 are elected in 8 regions. 7 MSPs in each of the 8 regions. And that's the second vote that we get, and that's by proportional representation. So the smaller parties have more of a chance of picking up the vote on the second ballot paper, the regional ballot paper, the proportional representation ballot paper. And the question is, how is it all going to fall this year now that we've got Reform UK in the mix and doing exceptionally well up here in Scotland? I mean, when you think about it, in England, you really just have your 3 main parties, Labour, Lib Dem and Tories, and Greens now rising. But in Scotland, we've always had this extra party, the SNP. So it makes it much harder for new parties to break through when the SNP are so strong as well. So according to the latest polls anyway, what does this say? Reform boost as Scots dismayed by PM Keir Starmer. And this is a poll just taken a couple of days ago that says that unfortunately the SNP are on course to return 60 MSPs of the 129. Now that's not a majority. A majority would be 65. But what's particularly interesting is in second place, Reform with 23, and then Labour with 15. So Reform UK polling at the moment above Labour. And the Tories would lose well over half their seats, dropping to only 13, with the Greens on 10 and the Liberal Democrats on 8. So that's 23 Reform MSPs, probably all of whom will be elected via the regional list. Could a Reform candidate win a first past the post seat in Scotland? I think it would be unlikely, but anything could happen these days. But so Reform are on course to do, relatively speaking, very well, but it does look like we're almost certainly going to get some kind of SNP winning most of the seats. Hopefully not an overwhelming majority of the seats. That would be very bad. We wouldn't want them to have free rein to do whatever they want for the next 5 years, but at least hopefully their vote can go down a bit. And I do think that quite a lot of SNP people will stay at home because they've been disheartened, disenchanted with the SNP over the last 5 years, not just because the SNP has failed to deliver the much vaunted independence, but also because some of the silly things that the SNP does, like its obsession with the trans issue, the obsession with not knowing what a man is. Your normal Scottish nationalist is not interested in these arcane, fringe, politically correct issues at all. But especially under the leadership of Nicola Sturgeon, she put an unholy amount of time into these fringe issues and thereby did succeed in alienating and upsetting and irritating quite a lot of her natural supporters. And, some of these natural supporters will, in fact, go and vote Reform. I don't doubt that at all. Won't be a huge number of them, but it will be a small percentage of them will vote Reform. Labour will lose out a lot to Reform, especially in the central belt. And the Tories are going to lose badly to Reform also. What that can mean, though, in the first past the post seats, when you have the Unionist or pro-UK vote split, Labour, Tory, Lib Dem, Reform, then in many of these marginals where it's SNP Labour marginal or an SNP Tory marginal, you could see the SNP actually winning. The SNP could actually do very well, unfortunately, in all of these first past the post constituency seats, just because their opposition vote is split so many different ways now. That would be ironic and also very irritating, I have to say.
Can I ask a quick question, Alistair, about we had Niall Fraser on the show.
Oh yeah, he's a great guy.
Quite a long time ago now. and he was hoping to stand for reform. But I heard that it didn't work out. Do you know? Is it confirmed he's not going to stand for them, or?
I don't think it's confirmed. No, it's still to be resolved. Hopefully he will be a candidate. Reform would be foolish to turn him down. He's extremely competent candidate who, if the world was the right way up, could be a future First Minister of Scotland. You know, he's of that quality. And if I was Reform, I would be looking at young people like him and saying, how do we get them into the party now? How do we get them into the parliament now, so that in 10, 15 years, they're in the Scottish cabinet?
Let me just interrupt. We've come up to our hour. I just want to say one more thing. Individual people, Audrey Dempsey, I heard her speak at Scotland, and she was a Labour candidate who spoke out against racism against white people in Scotland, and she got cancelled, dropped from Labour, cancelled, and she moved to Reform. Very brave lady to speak like that in Scotland, because Scotland are notoriously unwilling to admit that things like that go on, especially if you know about Chris Donald case. It's just unbelievable. But I heard her speak in at Glasgow Green. Great speaker, well said. Everything about digital ID that we talked about, she mentioned about that and stuff. People, individuals are really good, cool sometimes. Hopefully, maybe sometime in the future we could even interview a Reform candidate if Nigel will allow it. You know what I mean? Maybe, or something like that. But anyway, thank you very much, everyone, for getting involved and tuning in. We've had a good response. A bit better off Alistair's side than mine, but we're not on X at the moment, me and Pat. We're going to have to look at getting back on there. But thank you. Interesting talk. You've heard the ups and downs, and, you know, more or less agree on everything. Some things get my wick more than others, and I talked about that, how I know victims of child sexual exploitation, and Farage is jumping on the bandwagon. He's jumping on the bandwagon, and a lot of them have. And my personal experience there is that someone who's standing for Reform thinks he can come over to me and say, oh, John, we're going to split the vote. I've ran 4 elections consistently, and this is my 5th election. Why would I stand aside for anyone, especially a parachuted in Reform candidate? But any last words, guys?
No, just a quick one, you know. Get involved, join the smaller parties is my advice. Things are going to change in the next few years, and I think, you know, it's sliding to the right, and there's nothing they can do about it unless they actually like instigate a full-on dictatorship, which could happen if they declared war on Russia or something like that. So yeah, just keep the faith, and come and join us if you want to join us. You can go to our website, nationalhousingparty.uk, £22 a year to join. Even better, stand as a candidate. It's not too late to stand. We could still do it if you wanted to stand, or even if you want to just speak to us about it. But we encourage people to stand in elections. Even if you don't stand for us, just join the party you're thinking about. Go for it. Don't be scared, because I was scared when I first stood, and there was nothing to be scared of. So have faith in Jesus, and you can't go wrong. Thank you.
Ken, Alistair, any last words?
Just thanks very much, guys, for having us on. Brilliant, great chat. Good to set the world to rights about Reform. Yeah, and again, just adfparty.uk is our website. Will join us. We're still looking for candidates to stand, and adfscotland.net is the other one that we've got on the go at the moment. So yeah, give us a shout if you can, if you're interested.
And final, Alistair, with his great polling statistics and all that lot, well thought of, and it's just dead complicated in Scotland, mate. It is.
Yeah, well, we will survive, no question about it. Thanks for having me on. And also thanks, as I've said to you before, it was Pat that put me on to the importance of the UN Refugee Convention and why we needed to leave that. And in fact, so inspired me that I actually did write this book called Protect Our Country, enough is enough, basically. Policies to stop mass immigration. And we've got a couple of chapters exactly on the UN Refugee Convention, how to get out of it and what to do instead. Oh, there you go. Fantastic. And so basically all you need to do is go on to amazon.co.uk and search for Protect Our Country, and it'll be the first thing that comes up there. And thanks to you guys for putting me on to the importance of the UN Refugee Convention in all of our troubles.
Thank you, Alistair. Thank you, Ken.
Good night, guys. See you all next week, 8 p.m.